Live from the Castle of Spirits. It's Thursday morning right now as we're recording. I wish it were Saturday evening.
That's really exciting.
It would sound cooler, I know.
But, you realize we're not live anymore.
No, but we are coming from the Castle of Spirits, where you can read 4,600 plus true ghost and otherwise paranormal stories.
Is that right?
Submitted by listeners and readers just like yourselves.
Like me? Well, I live in the
Yes,
castle.
yes.
We have always lived in the castle.
We used to be merely readers of the castle.
I wouldn't go so far as to say merely readers. The readers are what built the website.
Obviously. But I mean, now we are the ghost keepers. We changed jobs.
We built this castle.
We didn't build it. Rowena built it.
On ghosts and souls.
Wow.
I was trying to do a song.
I know.
Let me do a song.
Yeah.
All right. No more singing.
No, thank you.
That wasn't singing.
It wasn't singing in any sense
next,
of the word.
interpretive dance.
At least you guys can't see that. Unfortunately, I can see that. And it's not pretty. And the ghosts like it, which, doubles down on the horror for me.
The ghosts are easily entertained. Unlike
you're calling them simple?
You.
You know what does entertain me, though?
I'm almost afraid to ask.
Ghost stories.
Oh, yeah. No, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I like ghost stories.
So I was wondering, maybe you could entertain me and read me a ghost story.
So no dance.
No dance.
All right. Well, it's a good thing that I came armed with a ghost story to read.
All right.
I was fumbling through the Castle of Spirits.
As you do.
Library. And I came across a very interesting story that was submitted in December of 2006. It's a long time ago, Jack. By Janelle Harvey in Leicester, UK, right? It's Leicester, but you're supposed to say Leicester, right?
Leicester, yes.
Leicester.
Yes.
Like the guy from WKRP in Cincinnati.
I believe our audience is probably too young for that reference.
Nobody's ever too young for okay, that's enough. And this is called Germany's Ghosts. I'd always been interested in the paranormal and the unexplained ever since I lived in Germany. My dad was in the army at the time, so he was always on duty. My mom was a full-time mom. She looked after me very well until I was in school at the age of 5, and then she went to work again. That's when it all started. We'd recently been posted to our new apartment in the British military married quarters, so we moved into the first floor, which had a balcony and a patio with a huge field out back. It was perfect. I was happy with the room I was given. Since I was only 5, I was happy with anything. After 1 month, we settled in well. My dad was called up to Bosnia for a year, so we were all preparing for my dad to leave home. I remember him packing his bags and saying goodbye, my mom crying and him hugging me, and that was it. He was gone. We'd been left alone in an unknown apartment. All I knew was that Dad was coming home in another 6 weeks. I couldn't wait until he was back, but it was a long way to go. One night, when I was half asleep in my bed, I was just about to nod off when something hit me hard in the face. I jumped out of bed, frightened at the thought that something had hit me. I looked up and saw my clown doll hanging on the ceiling, spinning around. I was freaked out at the thought that the clown had done it. I knew nothing about ghosts at the time, so I suspected the clown doll. 6 weeks passed by, and nothing else was unusual. My dad finally arrived home, and I was very happy he was back. That was until something else happened. I was sitting on his lap, watching rugby on TV. I had a cold glass of orange juice on the table in front of me, and I remember my mom sleeping on the right-hand side of me on the couch. I sat there, bored, and then something caught my eye. My glass of orange juice was moving on its own. It was moving as though an invisible hand was sliding it across for a drink. I drew a deep breath and grabbed the cup to stop it. I took my hand off, and the cup just sat there. My dad, on the other hand, was too occupied to notice anything. I stared at the cup, and once again, it started sliding on its own. I just watched it this time, and as soon as the cup got to the edge of the table, it stopped. I wasn't scared, just curious at the fact that it was moving. I don't remember anything else in particular. So after we moved out and left to go back to England, I asked my mom about the apartment and what went on there. She told me that I used to speak to an old lady. She said that one day her friend came around to have a chat and a cup of tea, and she went to sit next to me and I said, "Don't sit there." And my mom's friend asked me, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Don't sit there because the old lady is sitting there." And I pointed to where she was supposed to be sitting. My mom's friend wasn't really freaked out because she had a son who was claiming that a blue man sat in the corner of his room every night. She said her son was too afraid to sleep in his room because of that blue man. She also said that that room was always freezing, even in the heat wave that happened that year. She also claimed that her plug sockets and drawers were being mysteriously pulled and thrown everywhere when she was out. So one day, she asked my mom to house sit for her while she was away. My mom happily agreed and was responsible for the apartment. She told me that she only ever checked it twice. Nothing out of the ordinary happened there. But when her friend came back, she was shocked to discover all of the kitchen utensils thrown about. All of her drawers and plug sockets pulled out, and black footprints on the ceiling. It was as if a child or a very angry ghost had done it. My mom told me other occurrences happened at our house, such as seeing an old lady walking in the hallways at night, and my mom catching me talking to someone on occasion. I wasn't like a normal child talking to myself. It was as though I was having a whole conversation with another person. She listened intently to me, and she was very interested in what I was saying. I, on the other hand, don't remember a thing. It's almost like my subconscious mind had mentally blocked it out. A couple of years later, my mom decided to research the history of the military married quarters. After a lot of studying and researching, she found out some interesting information. She discovered that before the apartments were built, a farmhouse had resided on that land. An old couple lived in that house, an old lady and an old man. The house was built in 1873 and was unfortunately taken over by the Nazi occupation of 1944. The old couple were shot and the house was demolished. When the war was over, the British decided to build an army base there and let the soldiers' families move in with them into the married quarters. And after all those years, the couple still just wants to live. And that true ghost story was called Germany's Ghosts, written and submitted by Janelle Harvey in Leicester, UK in December of 2006.
There's a lot to unpack in that story.
Yeah, and honestly, the most disturbing part about it was what happened to that old couple and who did it to them.
Yeah, that was pretty horrible.
The Nazis in 1944 killing the couple, taking their home.
Yeah.
How do you expect somebody to rest in peace like that?
So I do kind of have to be that guy about one of the occurrences.
Okay.
The orange juice moving on the table.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen that happen. You have a glass, it's got some condensation, it's on a smooth table, gets a little puddle under it.
And she did say she was very young, like 5 years old.
Right. Yeah, as a 5-year-old, you've never seen something like that before. But if there's a little condensation on the table there, yeah, that glass can move by itself.
All right, well, Ghostbuster Jane over here
That's
has just ruined another story for us.
Just one of the many services I offer.
But it is good to keep a sort of pragmatic mind. Is that
For
a
sure.
saying?
For sure. I refuse to be one of those like ghost hunter people that you see on TV who are like, oh, that glass moved. Oh, this place is full of demons. You know what I mean?
You know what? Those shows used to be entertaining, but no more.
No,
you get to a certain point where you're like, all right, are they just trying to convince me that something's happening when nothing is happening?
Yeah.
I like to think that the older I get, and I am getting older.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Knock on wood, right?
You're getting closer and closer to joining the ghosts in the castle every day.
Wow. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't remember what I was saying. See, that's how old I am.
Oh.
But I think that the older I get, the more able I am to sort of, I don't know, identify bullshit when I see it.
Wow.
Or when I read it. Those TV shows are bull brown word.
Bull brown word.
And Janelle's story is the truth, damn it.
Wow. We're really into the language today.
I'm sorry. I feel very passionate about these
I
things.
guess so.
Speaking of passion.
But hang on, before we move on, I have also one other thing to bring up about that story that I did not like, and I think that it was completely inappropriate.
Making a kid watch rugby?
The clown on the ceiling.
Oh, yeah. Total poltergeist vibes, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I pictured, only like hanging marionette style from the ceiling.
Well, she said it was spinning also, so I was thinking maybe it was caught on the ceiling fan, but she did not mention a ceiling fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said she thought the clown threw something at her face.
And hit her.
Yeah. I don't like that.
Yeah, no, that's got horror movie written all over it.
Yes.
I like it personally.
Gross.
I would want to see it.
Ew. All right. I have a story, if you would be interested in hearing it.
I am. Is
Okay.
this a ghost story?
Well, duh.
Good.
Okay. This story is called Don't Watch Him Sleep, and it was submitted by Melissa in Alaska, USA, July of 2003. I'm not sure exactly where to begin my story, because if I go back to the very first time I ever experienced anything, I would be writing a book. I was 4 years old. I'm 33 now, when my parents bought and moved into the house that they still live in today. I can remember seeing the house for the first time and thinking it was too large and too scary. As it turned out, I was right. It was terribly scary. During my childhood and adolescence, I resided in 3 different bedrooms of the old house. One I shared with my older sister when we were very young. It wasn't too creepy, but then again, I was rarely alone in that one. The next room I had was a small dormer room in the upstairs portion of the house. I still, to this day, do not like that room. It is used as a sewing/craft room now by my mom. I do not go into that room. The last room that I had in that house was a large room upstairs directly across from another large room that my older sister slept in. This room had some activity, but never seemed threatening like the smaller room I had before. I have several stories about both of these rooms, but I won't go into them now. After 13 years in a bad marriage and a nasty divorce, I am now once again residing in this large room in the upstairs part of my parents' house. I was a bit nervous about moving back in there because as a child and teenager, I never once slept upstairs all alone. If my sister was ever not at home, I would sleep downstairs. However, being a rational adult, I convinced myself that I was probably just imagining things as a child and settled in without much incidents. I guess when you get older and you work 8 to 10 hours a day and fall into bed exhausted, things that go bump in the night just don't stir you as badly. My mom also says that she thinks all that activity stems around children because they rarely experienced anything after my sister and I got married and moved out. I tend to believe this theory because of some things that have happened lately when my 13-year-old son is staying with me. My son confided in me a few weeks ago that he doesn't like being upstairs alone because it seems like someone is watching him, and he hears someone walking up and down the stairs all the time. But the thing that floored me was his comment about the small dormer room at the front of the house that I do not like. I have never said anything about this room to him, and as far as I know, he doesn't know that I ever used it as a bedroom. He told me that it felt like something didn't want him in that room. He said he gets the creeps anytime he goes down the hallway toward it. I just brushed it off and told him it was probably because it was so small and claustrophobic. There's no sense scaring him about it. However, I cannot brush off a couple of incidents that happened a few days ago. Because of a sleep disorder that causes my son to go wild in his sleep and the steep stairwell to the ground floor, I have my son sleep in the same room I do. It's a huge room with plenty of room for 2 double beds, a dresser for him and one for me, a TV, a stereo, and still plenty of floor space left for moving around. My bed is closest to the door so that I can catch him if he tries to run out of the room in his sleep. His bed is across the room at sort of a right angle to mine, and his head is facing toward my feet. A few nights ago, I woke up to a strange woman standing by the wall at the foot of my son's bed. She was looking at him, not me. She was standing in a spot that she would have to have been about 3 inches thick to stand in, and she was sort of a shadowy haze. I couldn't tell much about her, but that she had long, dark hair hanging over her shoulders. Now, this is not the first time that I have awakened to see a figure in this room, but it's a first for it to be a woman. I was startled, but more than that, I was mad. It's bad enough for whatever or whoever to bother me, but as a mother, it just ticks me off to think that it's going to start in on my son. So very quietly but sternly, I said, "No, you leave him alone. He's a child. Go away now." I reached up and turned the light on, and the figure was gone. My son did not wake up, and I reluctantly fell back to sleep and never mentioned it to anyone. 2 nights later, my son wakes me up with a whisper from his bed saying, "Mom, she's standing there looking at me." I opened my eyes, and sure enough, the same figure was there in the same spot. Hoping my son was in enough of a dreamlike state to not be too scared, I calmly said, "Just tell her to go away and leave you alone, and that it's rude to watch you while you are sleeping." I heard him say in a stern but confused voice, "Go away, you're being rude." I blinked my eyes a few times to clear the crud off my contacts, and she was gone. We both went back to sleep, and the night was uneventful. I hoped he would not remember any of it the next day, but when he got up, he asked me who the heck the woman was that was bothering him in his sleep last night. I tried to tell him he was dreaming, but he didn't buy it. He distinctly remembered me telling him to tell her to leave him alone. We decided not to think any more about it, and the woman hasn't been back. I don't know what the attraction to my son was, but I guess she just needed to hear it from him that he didn't want her watching him sleep. Thank you again to Melissa in Alaska, USA, for submitting "Don't Watch Him Sleep" in July of 2003.
Well, that's a good story.
Yeah.
I have 3 comments about that.
Let's
One,
hear.
who sleeps with their contacts in? I guess people do. I've never had contacts.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. The few times I tried to wear contacts, I remember falling asleep with them in once or twice, and the next day, man, my eyes were tore up.
The next day you were seeing ghosts standing at the foot of your son's bed?
No, but I would wake up in the morning and my eyes were like glued shut. Yeah, don't sleep with contacts in, folks.
All right. And okay, but seriously, the other comment that I had was that lady's a badass. I mean, to have the presence of mind not to freak out. If I saw something like that, I wouldn't say, leave him alone. I'd be like, let's get out of here.
I mean, that's how you are regularly anyway.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you don't have to tell everybody about that.
But, never underestimate the power of Mama Bear.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm surprised she didn't go even wilder when she saw her the second time. I told you to stay away from him,
Yeah. Because, I can understand that. If I were in the room by myself and saw that, it would not go well.
No, what would you do?
Be very, very scared, probably wet the bed, definitely cry, probably pass out. Yeah. But to have your kid in there and have him looking at the kid, yeah. No, full Mama Bear.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say too, it was just an observation, something that the kid mentioned earlier in the story to his mom about not feeling welcome in this one room.
Yeah.
If nobody's ever experienced that, they might not understand what that feels like, but I've experienced that.
I don't know if I truly have or not.
Well, it's just something that comes over you. It's kind of like an instinct. it's just a knowing that there's something that doesn't want you here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no logic involved in it. You're like, there's something that doesn't want me here. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I have felt that. Do you remember, Vince? You were there. We all felt it. There were 3 of us. There was a house that we went and looked at. It was me and you and our realtor. And we went in, and nobody lived in the house. It was completely empty. It was like a 1940s house. When we first pulled up, I was like, oh, this house is really cute. It reminded me a lot of the house that I grew up in. Very similar style and everything. And it looked like it hadn't been remodeled since like the 60s, which wasn't, any different than a lot of houses we had looked at. It was really dark in the house, even though it was broad daylight outside. And it kind of smelled musty. I think that it had probably been an old person who lived there, for decades and had died recently. So we're walking through this house, and I just remember it feeling very cave-like and dark, even though we were turning on lights as we went. But it was also very maze-like. Remember? It was like there was no rhyme or reason to the hallways and everything in this house. And then we went downstairs, and downstairs wasn't quite as creepy as upstairs, strangely, but it was still really weird. And then the backyard was really strange, which we don't need to go into, but we were back in the living room upstairs and just kind of talking about how strange the house was. We were getting ready to leave. And all of a sudden, I just was overcome with this get out feeling. And I remember I started running. I pushed past you and our realtor and just bolted out the front door. And you guys, I don't know if you were just spooked because I started running, but you guys came running out. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I distinctly remember having a feeling of, you need to get out of here right now. And I thought it was strange because, I didn't like the house. I remember thinking that it had a creepy vibe, but I wasn't creeped out. It was more like, gosh, this house is dark and has a weird layout. So I wasn't necessarily creeped out while we were going through it, but as we were standing there and we were kind of trash talking, the house in the living room, I think that whoever was hanging out there was pissed at the things that we were saying about the house and, somehow caused that feeling to come over me. It was like, oh, really? If you don't like it, get out.
Well, yeah, I've experienced that feeling before. It's like an invisible face is screaming into you silently, noiselessly, but you're still feeling the psychic effects of being screamed at.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
Do you remember that other time that we were driving through the neighborhood? It was a weird little kind of intersection of old houses. And there was this one house that we passed. I instantly became really creeped out by the house just from being in the car and driving by it. Mm. And I remember I looked at you and I pointed to the house and I said, I think a serial killer lives in that house.
I don't remember
There was
this.
I didn't see a kill room. I didn't see anybody dragging a body out of the trunk of a car. I didn't see any barrels in their front yard, anything like that.
Always barrels.
Well, the Dexter influence. Mm-hmm. But I just got this really overpowering sensation that this is not a place you want to be. And I still don't understand it. I've been wanting to go back to that area to sort of explore a little bit more, but I completely forgot about it until just now.
Yeah.
And what's strange about the fact that I forgot about it is that it almost feels like my own mind protecting me from remembering so that I don't go back.
Do you remember where that house is? We should go drive by it.
I do. And we shall report on that. See if you have the
same feeling.
We'll go drive by.
All right. We'll go stalk the poor innocent people who live there.
Well, I'm certainly not going to knock on the door. Jamie Gum might appear.
Ooh. Hey, Vince.
What?
Speaking of knocking on the door, do you have another ghost story to read to us?
Oh, I do, actually.
All right, let's hear it.
In fact, this story is not a ghost story. Not in a traditional sense.
Oh, okay.
And I invite you to listen and tell me what you think the hell is going on in this story.
All right, let's have it.
It was written by Anonymous in Texas, submitted to the Castle of Spirits website in April of 2010, and it's called The Long Dirt Road. My husband and I just finished our dream home here in a small town near Brownsville, Texas. Our house is the last one on our dirt road for many miles. I suppose it was all too easy to ignore the strange things that we all saw as far as the construction was going on. The house itself was fully finished in November of 2009, so I guess with most of the stress gone and life slowing to normal, it was only a matter of time before we began to take notice of more things. You see, the house itself was right as rain as far as normal goes. It was the land that became the issue. One day, my 3 boys, Austin, 12, Julio, 5, and Manny, 3, all decided they wanted Mommy to take them for a walk down the dirt road. I didn't see it as a problem, since cars rarely used this road. It was around 8 in the morning when we started down the road. It wasn't but a minute or two before a woman ran out into the middle of the road in front of us, about 20 yards or so up the road. She looked odd, with a red hooded cloak from head to her bare feet and crazed hair. Her face was painted black with what appeared to be mud, and she had 4 obedient pit bulls by her side, sitting at attention, watching as she began to act very oddly. Now mind you, it's August in Texas, and the closest home in at least 10 miles was our own, not to mention the Texas heat, and this lady was wearing a full-length hooded long-sleeve cloak. She suddenly started chanting and sort of jumping around while holding this branch, waving it over her shoulders. I couldn't stop looking at her, and without a thought, I called out to her, perhaps if she had been in an accident or something and needed some help. She only then raised her eyes to look at us, but only to my children, and she lifted her hand with a smile, motioning for my boys to approach her. Well, as a mother, I don't think I need to say what I did next. Once we were all back at the house, I just brushed it off, telling the boys to stay close to the house and that I didn't want them venturing down the road without me. It was only that very same day, though, that we ended up walking back down the road again because I realized my youngest son's sandal must have come off there earlier. This time, what we saw would be far more unsettling than a strange woman. As I bent down to pick up Manny's sandal, I turned quickly when my 5-year-old began to scream one of those hysterical cries for help that makes a mother's blood run cold. When I saw his pale face, I noticed he was also urinating on himself. I turned toward the direction he was fixed on to have a look at the source, and there they were. I would never have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself. There, about 20 feet or so on the side of the road, were 4 small people, about 2.5 feet tall. One of them was about 2 feet at the most, and they were drinking from the puddles of water that had collected during the last rainfall. Then I noticed another one, but he was much bigger than the 4, and he wore all black. He seemed to be sort of a watch-out or a caregiver, as he didn't participate in the splashing and the drinking. The others were all dressed in white, handmade type clothing, and wore hats that were pointy like a garden gnome. They were speaking and joking, and the entire time not once did they look at us, until the big one did. I gave a shout from amazement. Then the big one grabbed up the smallest of them onto his shoulders and spoke to the others to go toward the tall grass. Not one word came from any of us as we watched them walk and disappear into the grass. Since then, I have seen them on several occasions around my house, just watching me, and although I'm scared, I'm also equally curious as to who or what they are. They do, however, cause a little mischief from time to time, but it's never anything serious. It's only like they want my attention. If anyone knows or has a similar experience in this way, I'd love to hear about it, if only for purposes of validation. And that's called The Long Dirt Road, submitted by Anonymous in Texas in April of 2010. I myself have nothing. I don't have anything.
Yeah, that was great. I need to know if they're still seeing that, and if anyone else has ever seen anything similar. I do think it's interesting. She saw the woman with 4 dogs that were just sitting there, and then later she sees 4 small humanoid type creatures,
Gnome-like,
and then a larger, closer to full size one, it sounds like. So it almost makes you wonder if that was the same, like they were in a different form. You know what I mean?
Right. They were in, the first time she saw them, they were in human form. And
wow. All right, Laszlo.
And then maybe they saw her coming and they said, gnome? And they shrunk down. Now, I don't know. It's kind of an embarrassing, maybe lame question. I don't know. Do you believe in gnomes? What do you think about this whole thing?
I don't not believe in them. All of this stuff, all of it. Like, I'm open to believing in all of it, but I'm not going to go blindly just believing in anything. Do I believe people when they tell me they experience these things? Absolutely, because I don't need proof that they didn't experience it. And, I'm not going to just completely dismiss people and their experiences because I don't know. We don't know what's out there. We don't know everything. And I think that it's really, I think we really think that we're much smarter than we are when we decide that we know what there is and isn't in the world.
Well, I don't know if we will ever know.
Well, and I think it's interesting that being Texas, which is so close to Mexico, and in Mexico, there's, a kind of a popular cryptid, the El Duende, which is kind of like a little gnome. I remember seeing, do you remember, Vince? It was a video. It was in Mexico somewhere, and it was night. There was a bright street light. There were a bunch of guys
there. I think they were like hanging around playing hacky sack or something.
Yeah, something like that. And they were speaking Spanish and just kind of laughing and,
goofing off,
just hanging out. And one of them was filming with an early phone camera. And back then they looked really bad. The big square artifacts all over the image and everything. The audio sounded like it was coming through a tin can. It was really bad quality. And they're talking and laughing, and just like on the side of the image, you can see the street light down the alley. And all of a sudden, like, this little gnome creature comes like sidestepping out. He looks kind of hunched over, like he's about ready to run at them. Remember? It's just like a silhouette of it. And they see it and they start like asking, like, what is that? Look. And it does start running toward them, and they all start screaming, and it was kind of funny, and ran off, and the video ends. But with an old camera phone like that, I don't know how.
And it was a few years old already.
Yeah, I don't know how they would have faked something like that. I'm not saying it was 100% factual. I'm saying I don't see how that was faked. But anyway, El Duende. Go search El Duende on YouTube.
And I know we've talked about El Duende before on previous shows, but if that's something that you guys find of interest, you guys, meaning you listening to this, let us know. Maybe we'll do some more. Or if you've experienced something like that,
yes,
tell us about it. Go to castleofspirits.com, get in touch.
Do it.
Speaking of getting in touch, Jane.
Yes.
What about you?
What?
Are you willing to get in touch with this audience by giving them another ghost story?
That was a great segue.
I know.
In fact, I am. This story is called The Ghost of Aircraft 1512, submitted by David in California, USA, July of 2001. I've been working on military aircraft for quite a few years now, and while I've worked on them, there seems to be a story that persists about one of the airplanes being haunted. The aircraft has an identification number, or tail number, of 1512. The story goes that prior to a flight from the United Kingdom heading back home, some of the ground crew of 1512 went on an all-night drinking binge. After the plane took off, one of the heavy drinkers climbed in a crew rest bunk in the back of the airplane to sleep it off. When another crew member went to check on him a few hours into the flight, they found him dead in his bunk. They say his spirit still inhabits the aircraft. Some people have claimed to hear strange tapping or sometimes tuneless humming when they're alone on the plane. Some people have even claimed to have set a switch on or moved levers only to find them moved back to their original position later when they were working alone on the plane. Now for my encounter with this ghost. A few weeks ago, I was working night shift and I was up inside aircraft 1512, getting ready to close and lock up the plane after some routine ground maintenance. I was raising the wing flaps with someone downstairs watching to make sure the wing flaps rose the way they were supposed to. All the windows and hatches were closed, except for a small crew entry hatch that I was going to go down when I was finished. Suddenly, I heard a tapping sound like work boots walking across the wooden floor panels of the aircraft cargo bay. Then I turned to see the restroom door fly open and rock back and forth a couple of times. I called out to the guy that I was working with, thinking he had come up the ladder. Then I turned to look out in front of the aircraft, and he was standing about 25 feet in front of the plane. As soon as I saw my coworker, I heard the restroom door slam shut. I swear there was no breeze or draft of air that could have done that. After that, I closed up the plane as fast as I could and left. I was creeped out by this incident, but I don't feel afraid to go back up in aircraft 1512, but I will make sure I have someone with me next time. I think the ghost was just having some fun with me and letting me know that he's heard me making fun of all the others who have had their encounters with him. Thank you again to David in California, USA, for submitting The Ghost of Aircraft 1512 in July of 2001. I really liked that story because when I was young, my mom worked at the Air Force Base here, and she was a mechanic on planes. And several times as a kid, I got to go into the aircraft hangars, and those things are huge and weird and creepy in their own way. But I got to go into some of the big jets, once or twice while they were on the ground. So I can kind of picture that and hear the way that it sounds in those hangars and in those jets. And, when he said there was no breeze or draft that would have slammed that bathroom door shut, I mean, unless that jet was out on the tarmac, I fully believe that. I mean, those aircraft hangars are so big.
They're like climate controlled.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a breeze that's going to come into that big, huge aircraft hangar up through a little crew hatch on the floor of the plane and slam a bathroom door shut. It's just, I don't think that that's going to happen.
Well, you think a lot about how sometimes places are haunted because they're places that people loved to be in real life, in their lives. Mm-hmm. And well, when you also think about pilots and the people who were drawn to do that, and then after they die, maybe they want to keep coming back to do it again, or at least just hang out. Right.
Well, and he was a military guy, and he's still surrounded by military people, and there's an amount of like camaraderie and stuff that goes along with that. And so I can see him just deciding, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to be here on my plane, doing what I love to do, surrounded by the people that I love to be surrounded by, and I'm gonna play jokes on them. And I think that's kind of a fun haunting while the plane is on the ground.
Right. I was going to say
talked about that before.
I don't like
Right.
the idea of levers being pulled and things like that when you're in mid-flight.
Right. Well,
You
you,
know.
saw how I reacted one time when there was a spider in the car
Folks, she almost crashed the car.
and I wasn't even driving. Imagine if it were a ghost in an airplane and you're in the sky. Yeah.
I like to think that our pilots would be cool and calm and collected enough just to say, okay, I'll deal with that later. Right now,
Right.
I'm piloting an Airbus and I
Mhm.
must get these passengers down.
Right. Yeah. You typically want your pilot to be very level headed, and to say that you saw or believe that a plane is haunted is to demonstrate that you are not level headed and therefore not, fit to fly.
In the eyes of the people who are...
Right. Of course. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but that's kind of the mentality around it.
Speaking of mentality, have you checked the lounge lately to see if we've received any messages from the fine folks listening?
I have not, but if you'll give me a split second, I will check it. We do have something in the lounge.
No way.
We do. Marie messaged us, and Marie is our new favorite person. She says, "Hi, I don't have Apple Podcasts, or else I'd review on there, but I'd like to tell you how much I enjoy your podcast. I've been a scaredy cat since I was a child, and I never want to experience my own paranormal activities. However, I've discovered through listening to the pizza episode that I love listening to ghost stories. It's thrilling and scary, everything I always avoid, but your chemistry, personalities, and your voices comfort me and even make me laugh at times throughout the stories. I can get quite creeped out when I remember some of the stories when I'm alone, but I always return for more. Props to you for making a dedicated listener out of me." Marie, you are welcome, and thank you so much for listening and for taking the time to send us a message that fills our little cold dead hearts with such joy.
It sure does. Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much. And you guys, if you feel the same, let us know.
Yeah, please.
If you
tell
feel
us.
differently, let us know also.
Our egos need the boost.
And we also need to be tamped down a little bit. So
So if you don't like us, tell us that too.
tell us that too. Just
Keep us humble.
tell it to our hearts.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's a much better song than the one I hear playing in the background now,
Yeah.
indicating that it is now time to end the broadcast because the ghosts have opened up their enclosure and are spreading
Ew.
throughout the castle
No.
in search of food. Ghosts do eat, and it is our duty and our pleasure and our privilege to be the ghost keepers of the Castle of Spirits, where we get to tell scary stories and feed the ghosts.
So, before we go, another reminder, send us your stories. castleofspirits.com.
True stories only, please.
That's right. You can call us, you can text us, you can email us, you can submit it through the website, you can say hi in the lounge, like Marie. You can just concentrate real hard on sending it to us mentally. Just please send us your stories. Now,
That last one won't work, but you can try.
speak for yourself.
I have every intention.
All right, Vince, I see. There's a ghost coming down the hall with the music right now. So we have to go right now.
No, he's getting close. Get back
Yep.
off.
Okay.
Back off.
Okay, we're coming. We're going to feed you right now.
Get back.
Ah!
Ah!